For more on this, let's bring in Senator John Hoeven, Republican of North Dakota, and a member of the Senate Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. So we've got two carrier battle groups now in position or on the way to the Iran area, Senator. That's an awful lot of firepower. What's your take on what might be about to happen?
John, good to be with you. Well, there's only one thing that the Ayatollahs in Iran understand, and that's strength. And in the Middle East, there's an old saying, bet on the strong horse. And President Trump and the United States are the strong horse. And this show of force is about making sure that the Ayatollah and his oppressive regime understand that this is serious and that change has to happen. And no one's a better deal maker than the president. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, and he understands world affairs better than anyone. So maybe there's the possibility of some kind of deal there. We're going to find out.
The exiled crown prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, says that the people there are crying out for freedom. Listen.
Look, the Iranian people's ask is very simple. They want liberty, they want freedom. And of course, I think President Trump realizes that when he said regime change might be the solution. This is something we've been asking for a long time. One thing I would simply add to what the president said when he says the regime has kept on talking and talking and talking. But the president should also know that they have also kept on killing and killing and killing. As we speak.
So he is the son of the deposed Shah of Iran, and I don't mean to be critical of the son, but there's a reason that his father was deposed, and young people had a huge hand in that back in the day and helping to install this theocracy that the Iranian people now, seem to hate so much.
Understand, but there's no more oppressive regime that exists other than this theocracy that actually preaches terrorism. And it's not only their own people they're oppressing. They may have killed more than 30,000 protesters, their own people, but they also have their cat's paws, whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. This is the largest exporter of terrorism in the world, of any country in the world. And they refuse to even recognize Israel's right to exist. They feel Israel should be wiped out. This is the kind of oppressive regime that the people of Iran are suffering under right now. They are rising up. And you saw yesterday marches across the world, hundreds of thousands and millions of people that want to help the Iranian people throw off this oppressive yoke. Now, I understand what you're saying about the former crown prince, but at most that would be a transition position or intervention in terms of him participating. Ultimately, it's got to be about what the Iranian people want for their governance.
The murders of the Iranian people has become a point of contention even among some Democrats. Listen to John Fetterman criticizing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman from the Bronx.
Right.
Why is she so eager to criticize and find a way to criticize Israel? But I don't really recall them saying anything as Iran was executing thousands and thousands of their protesters for that. I mean, where we are and call this is and stand with Israel, that's our special ally, and there was never a genocide. And when there is a genocide where you're executing tens of thousands of people in Iran, why not and call that out too?
Your final thoughts on that topic, Senator.
Senator Fetterman has not only been clear-eyed, but clear-spoken about the need to stand with Israel against oppressive regimes like Iran. And again, another important point he made there is when our senators, our representatives go overseas, how about showing a bond or support for all of us in America as we work with our allies to make sure that we fight against tyranny and help oppressed people.
Senator John Hoeven, Republican of North Dakota. Thanks very much for coming on.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.